Story. I overheard my girlfriend tell her friend I was just her backup, so I returned the favor in a way she'll never forget. I was going to propose that weekend, but one sentence changed everything. You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? Like you're standing there, hearing words that rearrange everything you thought was real, and your brain refuses to process them? That was me standing in Sophie's apartment, holding a bottle of wine, listening to my world collapse in real time. But let me start before the fall. I'm Ethan, 27, fairly average in every sense. Average height, average looks, average job. I'm not the kind of guy who turns heads when I walk into a room. I'm the kind who holds the door open and makes awkward small talk about the weather. You know, say, the kind of guy your mom likes instantly, but your friends forget about a week later. And for a long time, I convinced myself that was enough. I didn't need to be flashy or charming or mysterious. I just wanted someone who saw me. Really saw me. Then Sophie happened. She wasn't like anyone I'd met before. Confident, witty, effortlessly magnetic. She had this way of tilting her head when she listened that made you feel like every word you said mattered. We met at a friend's birthday party 2 years ago. I was the quiet guy sipping beer near the kitchen, and she was the one lighting up the room. She walked up to me and said, "You look like you're mentally narrating a documentary right now." I laughed awkwardly, of course, and that was it. We talked all night about stupid things. Movies that made us cry, worst first dates, how both of us secretly hated pineapple on pizza. It was easy, natural, like I'd known her forever. I remember thinking finally someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm too quiet or too boring. Our relationship grew fast. Dinners that turned into midnight walks, movie nights that became sleepovers, little things that made me fall harder each day, her morning texts, her teasing sarcasm, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder while scrolling through memes. Sophie had this way of making me feel like I was enough. For the first time in years, I felt chosen. She'd say things like, "You're the calm I needed," or "You're the only one who really gets me." And I believed it. God, I believed every word. After about a year together, I started thinking long term. We talked about moving in, about our future, about kids. I was saving for a ring. Nothing fancy. Just something classic and elegant like her. I was going to propose that weekend. I'd planned it perfectly, a quiet dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, followed by a walk to the pier where we'd first kissed. I even practiced the speech in front of the mirror like an idiot. I wanted it to be perfect, but perfection, I guess, isn't real. That Friday, I stopped by her apartment after work. She was hosting her best friend Amanda for a little girls' night, and I just wanted to drop off a bottle of her favorite wine, a surprise before our big weekend. I texted her that I'd come by, but she didn't reply. No big deal. I figured she was busy. When I got there, her car was parked outside, lights on in the living room. I used the spare key she'd given me months ago, something that, looking back, now feels like a joke, and quietly stepped in. I could hear voices from her bedroom, laughing. I didn't want to intrude, so I thought I'd just leave the wine on the kitchen counter and text her later. But as I walked past the hallway, something in her tone caught my ear, that low, conspiratorial laugh people use when they're sharing something deliciously cruel. And then I heard my name. "Ethan? Oh my God, Amanda. He's so sweet, it's almost annoying, like a golden retriever with a credit card." Amanda laughed. "Stop, that's mean." "No, seriously," Sophie continued between giggles. "He's nice, dependable, totally obsessed with me. But come on, he's not Jake. I'm still completely in love with Jake. Ethan's just safe, you know? The kind of guy who'd never leave." My stomach dropped. "He'll probably propose soon," she said, her voice almost playful. "Watch me say no and break his heart." Amanda laughed again, half shocked, half amused. "You're terrible." "No, I'm honest," Sophie said, grinning. I could hear it in her tone. "He's the backup plan, Amanda. The just-in-case guy. You need one of those, they make you feel secure." Backup plan. Those two words punched the air out of my lungs. I froze in the hallway, gripping that stupid bottle of wine like it could anchor me to reality. I remember staring at the wall, the framed photo of us laughing at the beach, and feeling like I was watching two strangers. I didn't even feel anger at first, just disbelief, confusion, like maybe I misheard. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I'd walk in and she'd smile that perfect smile and it'd all make sense. But deep down I knew. I knew that tone in her voice. I'd heard it before, the tone people use when they talk about something they own, something beneath them. I backed out quietly, careful not to make a sound. I walked down the stairs, out the door, into the night. The bottle of wine slipped from my hand and shattered on the pavement, red bleeding across the concrete, like the perfect metaphor for how I felt inside. I sat in my car for an hour, just sat there. I couldn't cry. I couldn't scream. My brain just kept replaying her laugh on loop light, effortless, cruel. I kept thinking, this is the person I was going to ask to marry me. When I finally drove home, the city felt different, colder. Every red light stretched forever. Every song on the radio felt like mockery. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, scrolling through old pictures of us. Each one looked fake now. Every "I love you" text felt like a line from a script she'd been reading. And here's the thing, I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next day. Something in me broke differently. Instead of exploding, I imploded. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd hurt me. I wanted her to believe nothing had changed. So I texted her the next morning. "Hope you had a fun night. Can't wait for dinner tomorrow." She replied instantly. "Aw, you're the sweetest. Love you." I stared at that message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the words, "Love you too," before I finally typed it and hit send. That was the moment I decided. If she could play pretend, so could I. The next evening, I went to her place like nothing had happened. She greeted me at the door, kissed me, told me I smelled nice. I wanted to throw up, but I smiled, asked about her day, listened as she complained about work. Every time she laughed, I wondered if it was the same laugh she used with Amanda, the same one that made me flinch. That night, we cooked together pasta and garlic bread, and she played music while dancing barefoot in the kitchen. It should have been perfect. It used to be perfect. Now, it just felt like watching a movie I'd already seen, knowing how it ends. After dinner, we cuddled on the couch, and she fell asleep against my chest, her hand resting over my heart. I stared at her face, memorizing every feature, the soft freckles on her nose, the faint line between her brows when she dreamed. I used to love this sight. I used to feel lucky. Now, I just felt hollow, because I realized the woman I loved wasn't real. She was an illusion, built from half-truths and charm. And I, the safe, dependable backup, had been living in someone else's fantasy. My mind replayed her words again. He's so pathetic and desperate. He'll probably propose soon. Watch me say no and break his heart. I swallowed hard. My eyes burned. I wanted to shake her awake, scream, ask her why. Why lead me on? Why make me believe in something she never felt? But instead, I whispered something I didn't even plan to say. Something that came from somewhere deeper than anger from clarity. I leaned close, my voice barely audible in the dark. If I'm your backup plan, I whispered, then I'll rewrite the ending. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, realizing that sometimes heartbreak doesn't come from a dramatic explosion. It comes quietly, disguised as acceptance. And that night, as I held her sleeping body, the same body that belonged to someone else's heart, I decided I wouldn't confront her. Not yet, because love might have made me blind. But betrayal? Betrayal was about to teach me how to see. They say silence after betrayal isn't peace, it's preparation. And in my case, that silence became my greatest weapon. After that night, after hearing Sophie laugh about how I was her backup plan, something inside me flipped. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or demand an explanation. I just shut something off. Not my love that had already died the moment I heard her voice on that phone call, but my naivety. If she could pretend, so could I. So, for the next few days, I acted exactly like the version of me she thought she controlled, loving, loyal, predictable. She'd text and I'd reply instantly. She'd call me my sweet boy, and I'd laugh and play along. I even sent her flowers at work that Monday, just to keep up the illusion. To her, everything was normal. To me, everything had meaning. Every word she said, every tone shift, every lie wrapped in affection, I was cataloging it all. I started keeping notes, literally. A document on my phone titled Her Words. Every time she said something that contradicted her actions, I wrote it down. Every time she texted me something sugary while flirting with another guy on social media, I screenshot it. I wasn't sure why. At first, revenge wasn't fully in my mind yet, but I think some part of me wanted the truth documented so that later, when she tried to rewrite the story, I'd have the receipts. And Sophie was getting comfortable. Too comfortable. She started making comments that, before, I might have brushed off as teasing. Now, I saw them differently. Like when she said, "You'd do anything for me, wouldn't you?" And I smiled, replying softly, "You have no idea." Or when she joked, "You're so easy to please. It's adorable." I'd just laugh and say, "Guess I'm simple like that." Every interaction became a quiet study. I was watching her, but she never noticed. A few weeks in, I started working on myself, partly to distract from the ache, partly to start feeling like a person again. I joined a gym near my apartment, started running in the mornings. At first, it was pure rage that powered me, imagining her face every time I lifted or sprinted. But slowly something shifted. I wasn't doing it for her anymore. I was doing it for me. Every rep, every drop of sweat was a reminder that I could rebuild from scratch. Meanwhile, Sophie kept playing her role, the loving girlfriend when convenient, the detached dreamer when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She'd tell her friends I was the perfect boyfriend, but I'd catch her deleting messages from random guys, switching screens when I walked by. Old me might have asked, "What's that?" New me just smiled and said, "Need help picking an outfit?" I could see the confusion in her eyes sometimes, like she sensed something was off but couldn't place it. I wasn't clingy anymore. I wasn't begging for affection. I wasn't desperate. And people like Sophie thrive on desperation. It's their oxygen. So when I started pulling back emotionally, just subtly enough that she couldn't accuse me of being distant, she tried harder. She started dressing up more when we met, complimenting me out of nowhere, buying small gifts, which she'd never done before. It was like she felt the leash slipping and was trying to pull it tighter, but I wasn't the same dog anymore. Around that time, something unexpected happened. I ran into a guy at a local cafe, tall, scruffy, holding a camera. We were both ordering coffee, and I overheard him asking the barista about a photography exhibit happening downtown. I'd been dabbling in photography as a hobby, so I struck up a conversation. We talked about lenses, lighting, stuff like that. His name was Jake. At first, the name didn't click, but when he mentioned his last name and that he used to date a woman named Sophie, my blood ran cold. I didn't show it, of course. I just smiled, acted curious. We grabbed a table and talked for an hour about photography, life, relationships. He seemed like a good guy, down to earth, calm, not bitter, just wiser. Eventually, I said, as casually as I could, "Funny, my girlfriend's name's Sophie too. Small world." He chuckled, sipping his coffee. "Hope it's not the same one." Mine left me with trust issues and a broken drone. I laughed, pretending not to notice the chill running through me. "What happened?" He leaned back, sighing. It's a stupid story. She was great at first. Beautiful, smart, funny, but she loved attention more than honesty. I caught her texting another guy while we were dating. When I called her out, she ghosted me for 2 weeks, then dumped me saying I was too serious. A month later, I saw her posting pictures with someone new. My stomach twisted. The timeline matched almost perfectly. She had this pattern, Jake continued. Whenever someone got too close, she'd look for an escape, like she needed drama to feel alive. I nodded slowly. Guess some people just don't know what to do with peace. He smiled faintly. Exactly. We exchanged numbers. He mentioned needing help with a small local photography project, and I offered to collaborate. He had no idea who I was dating, and I didn't tell him. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, Jake and I became friends. We'd shoot landscapes on weekends, share editing tips, grab beers afterward. I liked him genuinely. He was the kind of person I wanted to be. Self-assured, calm, unbothered by the past. And through those hangouts, I learned more about Sophie than I ever expected. Jake told me how she'd used emotional manipulation to keep him chasing, pulling away, just enough to make him fight for her attention, then rewarding him with affection when he started to drift. How she'd make him feel guilty for wanting commitment, then accuse him of not being supportive enough. Every story sounded like deja vu. It was eerie, hearing my life narrated by someone else's voice. By the time I went home that night, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to just move on quietly. I was going to let Sophie reveal exactly who she was to everyone, and I wouldn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was stay quiet, keep playing my part, and let her dig her own grave. Sophie's arrogance made that easy. She'd always been proud of how in control she was. One evening, while we were watching TV, she got a call from Amanda. I muted the volume and leaned back, pretending not to listen. No, Sophie said, laughing softly. He's obsessed with me. Like, he'd literally do anything I ask. It's kind of cute, but also exhausting. Pause. Of course he's still around. Why wouldn't he be? Guys like him don't leave. He's safe. I didn't even flinch this time. I just kept scrolling through my phone. Later that night, she curled up next to me, whispering, "You're too good to me. You know that?" I smiled faintly. Guess that's my flaw. She giggled, kissed me on the cheek, and fell asleep on my chest. I stared at the ceiling again the same way I had weeks ago, but this time, I didn't feel broken. I felt calm, because now I had a plan. I started collecting more evidence, not for blackmail, but for clarity. I saved messages where she'd gaslight me about things I knew she said, screenshotted her social media interactions, even recorded a few of her phone calls when she bragged to Amanda about training me. Each file was a piece of armor protection against the version of me she thought I still was. And with every passing day, I felt stronger. I started dressing better, got a haircut that actually suited me, started talking to coworkers more, joined weekend hikes, reconnected with old friends. People began to notice. One of my colleagues, a friend named Lila, even joked, "You're glowing lately, Ethan. Sophie must be treating you right." I just smiled, something like that. Inside, I was glowing not from love, but from liberation. Sophie noticed too. The shift unsettled her. "Have you been working out?" she asked one night, eyeing me curiously. "Yeah, a bit," I said, chopping vegetables for dinner. She smiled, but there was a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. "You never used to care about that stuff." I shrugged. "Guess I'm finally taking care of myself." She laughed lightly. "Don't get too confident, I like you humble." That line stuck with me. Not because it hurt, but because it told me everything I needed to know. She didn't want a partner. She wanted control. And control was exactly what I was taking away, piece by piece, without her even noticing. Over the next month, I became her mirror. I gave her everything she gave me: surface affection, hollow validation, fake promises. She loved it. She thought she was winning, but I was done playing checkers. I was building a chessboard. By the time the holidays rolled around, Sophie was completely wrapped up in her own narrative. She told Amanda she was thinking about breaking up with me soon, that she'd outgrown the relationship. I knew this because she accidentally left her phone unlocked while in the shower. I didn't even need to look for it anymore. The truth practically delivered itself. I smiled when I read it. She thought she'd end things on her terms, but this time, I was the author. That night, as she came out of the shower and hugged me from behind, whispering, "You're too good to lose," I felt a strange mix of amusement and pity. She really believed she was untouchable. I turned around, kissed her forehead, and said softly, "You have no idea how right you are." She laughed, hugging me tighter. And in that moment, as she wrapped her arms around me, I looked past her shoulder, eyes calm, lips curving into a faint, knowing smile, because I'd already started writing the ending, and she was walking straight into it. It's strange how life gives you opportunities to rewrite your story. You think it's a small choice, a casual smile, a tiny lie, a little silence, and suddenly, you're in the middle of something bigger than yourself. Something that feels like destiny. That's exactly where I was when the plan fully formed in my head. By now, Sophie thought she had me figured out. The devoted, loving boyfriend. The guy who'd do anything for her. The safe one. And she was right on the surface. I kissed her good morning every day. I held her hand in public. I laughed at her jokes, cooked her meals, bought her little gifts she didn't even notice. I texted her sweet messages that made her heart flutter. I even acted that anxious, excited boyfriend whenever she mentioned the future. She was basking in control, thinking the game was hers. Meanwhile, behind that calm exterior, I was working a very different game. I started by buying the ring, the exact one she'd pinned on Pinterest months ago. The one she had casually shown me while scrolling through her phone. A classic, elegant solitaire that looked understated at first glance, but sparkled like it was meant to be noticed. I smiled to myself when I slid it into the little velvet box. Perfect. She'd never suspect the twist. I began planning the proposal dinner meticulously. I wanted it to be flawless. The restaurant where we had our first date, the table in the corner by the window, candles flickering, the music soft in the background, every detail accounted for. Every step choreographed. Sophie, of course, had no idea. A week before, she was already bragging to Amanda over coffee. "Oh my God, he's so obsessed. I can feel it. He's probably planning some over-the-top proposal. It's kind of pathetic, honestly. I'm thinking of rejecting him softly, just enough to break his heart but not make it ugly." I don't want anyone thinking I'm cruel. I could almost hear the arrogance in her voice as I imagined her sitting there, fingers wrapped around her latte, smug and confident. Pathetic. That word kept me steady in the weeks leading up to the big night. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled to myself. Because she didn't know that every soft rejection she was planning, she was walking straight into my story. The day of the proposal, I woke up feeling calm. Not anxious, not nervous, calm. I'd rehearsed the speech in front of the mirror dozens of times, not the one about love, not the one she expected, but the one about truth, about respect, about everything she thought she could hide. I dressed carefully, tailored suit, perfectly knotted tie, hair done just enough to look effortless. I checked the ring in my pocket and felt its weight, not just metal and diamond, but the promise of justice. When I arrived at her apartment to pick her up, she greeted me like she always did, bright smile, eyes sparkling, unaware of the storm waiting for her. "You look amazing," she said, leaning in for a kiss. "Thanks," I said. "You too." She twirled in her dress, soft, floral, delicate, and I felt a flicker of nostalgia, but nothing more. The old feelings had been buried deeply. We arrived at the restaurant, and I could see her excitement growing. Every glance at me, every smile she threw my way, was fuel for the performance. I laughed at her little jokes, nodded attentively, and complimented her like I was her adoring boyfriend. She loved it. I noticed a few of her friends and colleagues seated nearby. Casual conversation, plates of food being served. They were there because she'd invited them, saying it was a special night for us, but really she wanted witnesses to my expected humiliation. She thought she was controlling the narrative. She had no idea the narrative had already shifted. When the moment felt right, dessert cleared, wine poured. I stood, cleared my throat, and looked around at the small gathering. Everyone's attention pivoted to me. Sophie's smile faltered slightly, sensing the seriousness in my tone. I held the ring box discreetly in my pocket and began. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said softly. "This isn't just about a dinner or a celebration or even a proposal. This is about truth and about realizing that the people around us, the ones we love, the ones we trust, sometimes deserve more than silence." Sophie's brow furrowed. The smirk she'd expected didn't come. I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. "I thought I knew love," I continued, voice steady. "I thought I was being careful. Thought I could give my heart to someone who cared as much as I did. But love isn't supposed to feel like a one-way street, and it isn't supposed to be a rehearsal for someone else's amusement." People leaned in. Sophie shifted in her seat. I felt the quiet power of the room shift toward me. "And then," I said, reaching into my pocket, "I heard the truth." I pressed play on my phone. The room filled with her own voice, crisp, clear, unedited. "I'm still completely in love with Jake. Ethan's just safe. He's the kind of guy who'd worship me forever. I'll let him propose just to see how far he'll go, then say no and break his heart." The laughter that followed in the recording echoed through the small room. Sophie's hand flew to her mouth, her face drained of color. Dead silence. I stepped forward, pulling the ring out of my pocket and holding it up. Not to offer it, but to show the world the contrast between the image she wanted and the reality she created. "You said I was pathetic for loving you," I said softly, meeting her wide-eyed gaze. "Maybe I was. Maybe I gave too much. Maybe I trusted too much. But not anymore." The crowd was frozen. Some stared at her, others at me. Whispers bounced across the room, but I didn't flinch. I didn't hesitate. I placed the ring gently on the table in front of her. Not a proposal, not a threat, just a statement. "And just so it's clear," I continued, "this isn't about revenge. It's not about humiliating you. It's about showing the truth, about showing everyone what happens when someone thinks they can manipulate love for their amusement." Her mouth opened. No words came out. Her friends looked at me, then at her, then back at me. The tension was electric. "You told me I was safe," I said, voice calm, deliberate. "You told me I was pathetic. You told your friend you'd break my heart just for fun. But here's the thing." I paused, letting it sink in. "I'm done being the backup plan." I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. The restaurant was silent. Sophie's eyes followed me, disbelief etched into every line of her face. I didn't look back. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Thunderous silence followed. Outside, I took a deep breath of cold night air and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Liberation. Real, unshakable freedom. For weeks I had built this calm, quiet control. I had pretended to be the same devoted boyfriend, all while strengthening myself, documenting her deceit, learning the truth about her past. And now, standing outside the restaurant, I realized the best part, the quiet justice, the ultimate satisfaction, wasn't in screaming or yelling or even confrontation. It was in letting her play out her own narrative, while I rewrote mine. She had underestimated me. She thought I was predictable, malleable, incapable of seeing her pattern. She didn't realize that quiet observation, patience, and restraint could be more devastating than anger. As I walked down the street, the night air crisp against my skin, I smiled faintly. Sophie had thought she controlled the story, but I'd written the ending. And the truth, as always, is more powerful than any lie. It's strange how life can hit the reset button when you least expect it. Months had passed since that night at the restaurant, the night I stopped being her backup plan and started being myself again. I won't lie, the first few weeks afterward were surreal. Sophie's absence was deafening, and the echo of that quiet justice I'd delivered played in my head like a movie I couldn't stop watching. But life has this way of moving forward whether you're ready or not. I'd moved into a new apartment, bigger, brighter, filled with light instead of shadows. The kind of space where every wall seemed to whisper, "You belong here." I started waking up without that tight knot in my chest. Coffee tasted better in my new kitchen. Music sounded fuller. Even the mornings, the ones I'd spent in quiet dread while waiting for her text or call, felt free. Work changed, too. I'd taken on a new role at my company, a promotion that came partly because I was finally confident enough to ask for it. I started networking, giving presentations, actually enjoying conversations with people who, unlike Sophie, didn't drain me emotionally. And of course, I thrived socially. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected, joined a hiking club, even started volunteering on weekends. I laughed more than I had in years. Not fake, not performative, genuinely, effortlessly. I felt alive again. Meanwhile, Sophie's world had begun to crumble. I didn't keep tabs actively. I didn't need to. News and mutual friends made it clear her reputation was unraveling. Friends who once adored her were cutting ties. People were starting to see the pattern I had uncovered: the emotional manipulation, the games, the way she used people until she got bored. Her ex Jake wasn't quiet about it either. He started sharing his story publicly, the way she had treated him, cheated on him, left him in the lurch. Surprisingly, it wasn't malicious. It was matter of fact, like a cautionary tale. And because he presented it calmly, honestly, people believed him. Friends who had been mutual, colleagues who had seen her behavior firsthand, even strangers on social media, the narrative shifted. Her career began to feel the ripple effect. Clients she had cultivated started questioning her professionalism. People who once worked with her hesitated. The woman who had once seemed untouchable now had to navigate a world where her charm no longer protected her. It wasn't cruel. It was simply natural, cause and effect. And then one rainy afternoon, I got the text I never expected. "Ethan, can we meet? I need closure, please." My thumb hovered over the screen. My first instinct was to delete it, toss the phone, forget she existed entirely. But something inside me, curiosity, maybe closure, maybe the desire to feel the finality, made me type, "Sure, cafe at 3, she agreed. I arrived first, taking a seat in a quiet corner, sipping a latte, watching the raindrops streak the window. My reflection stared back at me, a version of myself I barely recognized a year ago. Tighter jaw, confident posture, calm eyes, healed, strong. And then she walked in. Sophie, different. Not because she had changed, but because the shine had dulled. Her hair was still perfect, her makeup meticulous, but there was an exhaustion in her eyes, a vulnerability I had never seen before. She smiled nervously, sat across from me. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," I replied. Silence settled between us, the kind that used to be filled with tension, anger, and longing. Now it was neutral, almost comforting. I wanted to apologize," she said after a long pause, "for everything, for lying, for manipulating. I was wrong, and I know I hurt you." I listened, really listened, not because I wanted her forgiveness, but because I wanted to witness her honesty. For the first time, she was being real, no masks, no arrogance, just the fractured remnants of someone who realized the weight of their actions. "Thank you," I said finally. "It means something that you can admit it." She looked down, twisting her hands. I needed to say it. I needed closure." I nodded. I could feel it, the story between us, the tension that had hung like a cloud, finally being resolved, not through revenge, not through shouting, but through truth. "Closure," I said, letting the word hang. "I can give you that. But understand this, I'm not here to forgive you. Not yet. I'm here to close the chapter for me." She swallowed. "I understand." I took a deep breath and leaned back, letting my calmness anchor the conversation. "You taught me something, Sophie. Something important." She blinked, unsure. "You were right about one thing," I said, voice steady. "I was your backup. But now," I smiled faintly, letting the words settle in, "I've backed up and moved on." Her mouth opened slightly, as if she wanted to argue, to cry, to protest. But I didn't give her that opportunity. I didn't need to. The power wasn't in the confrontation. It was in the release, the quiet, undeniable, peaceful closure that left no room for games. We sat a few moments longer, exchanging no words, just sharing the finality of the moment. Then she stood, offered a small, broken smile. "Thank you, Ethan." I nodded. "Take care of yourself, Sophie." And that was it. I walked out into the rain, not angry, not bitter, not sad. I walked free. The city around me felt alive, lights reflecting in puddles, the hum of traffic, the scent of wet pavement. And for the first time in years, my chest wasn't tight. My heart wasn't tethered to someone else's deception. I was whole. Months of preparation, patience, self-work, and quiet observation had led to this, not a dramatic showdown, not an explosion of fury, but something far rarer and more satisfying. Peace. The streets blurred past as I walked, shoulders relaxed, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Life had finally restored balance, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and free from someone who never deserved me. It wasn't just about her downfall. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about reclaiming myself, my time, my trust, my love for life. And as I walked on, I realized something. The story had ended perfectly, not because of vengeance, but because truth and self-respect are undefeated forces. Some people only teach you how to hurt. Some people only teach you how to love. And some teach you your worth. Sophie taught me mine. And now, finally, I could move forward. You were right about one thing: I was your backup. But now I've backed up and moved on. For the first time in years, I walked away smiling, free. And that, my friends, is the quiet, devastatingly satisfying ending you don't see coming. The kind that leaves you lighter, wiser, and just a little stronger. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.